Hi everyone, good morning. Today is Monday, January 10th, 2022, and wow, it feels like it has been a while since I last recorded. Perhaps because it has been a while. It's been winter break, and I don't usually, when I don't drop kids, then uh, I don't tend to find the space in the day to make these. So, however, I did have a chance to read lots of books that I will be reviewing in the coming days. This book review, though, is something that is, I would say, a long overdue one, because I read The Boy Crisis a while back, and I felt like it was not necessarily the perfect capstone to the other two books, namely Women Can't Hear What Men Don't Say and The Myth of Male Power, but also not just the capstone, but it is also, I feel, something that really took what these two books had to say to the next level, and in many ways to the next generation. And yeah, and I've really loved this book ever since I first read it. In fact, so much so that I wanted to reach out to the author himself, Dr. Warren Farrell, who also happens to live here in California. But I have to say, I was a little bit initially. I was a little bit. I wouldn't say intimidated, but I felt like, well, he's an established author. Like, could I reach out to someone like that? So I just simply got on his mailing list. And I'm very happy to say that during this Christmas season, I did actually communicate with him a little bit over email, which was very nice. And yeah, so Dr. Warren Farrell, this is really interesting. He worked in some government administration long time ago, I think in the maybe late 60s from I think maybe it was during the Guns and Butter era. I'm not sure, but and he used to be a feminist too, which is why I was a little bit. I have to say I was a little bit unsure. Let's just say about what he was going to write, because I'm always very like cautious of ideologues, so to speak. But uh, what I was quite impressed to know was that he started out being a feminist, and then when he discovered that all these feminists, they didn't really want, so here's, I have a problem with feminists, frankly. Let me just say that first of all, because feminists purport wanting equality, but feminists don't actually want equality, they want superiority. And that's what I think. So I was and I'm glad that he in his own much more he states things in a much kinder, gentler way than I possibly do. I have a far more, one might say, developed masculine side. And if you hear how Dr. Warren Farrell talks, he's very soft spoken, he's very gentle, he has this very softer, genteel manner. And in his own way, he expressed how he had made that same kind of come to that same sort of realization that it was almost when the equal other side was presented, that's when he got kind of the what is it, the hand from the feminists. And yeah, I agree, I think that's correct, because that is kind of what ends up happening a lot, with people who are like, oh, we're oppressed, and then when you put responsibility there, then it's like, oh yeah, no, no thanks, So, anyways, I've already spent about 4+ minutes doing the preamble. Hopefully, you're watching this in 2x speed, because I do speak slowly. So I'll start with what my thoughts on the book, or what came up for me in these books. So, first of all, His I don't know if this was his first book, but it's his first book that I read. Women Can't Hear What Men Don't Say. In this book, the thing that was most striking to me was this notion of women or men viewing women as sex objects, but the counter to that as women really viewing men as success objects. And I personally, I must admit, it's true. Um, I personally certainly do have a bias for that, I have to say. Um, you know, seeing a man who has his shit together. I'm not saying you have to be like, some grand title or your bank balance or whatever. It's not that. But a man who has his shit together, who can, who has that, you as a woman can feel like you can rely on him, you can depend on him, as opposed to like someone who you don't think is very reliable. Like, well, that may be true for both, on the flip side too. But nevertheless, my own personal bias, yeah. I mean, I would have a hard time respecting a man as a partner, let's say, or as a husband or boyfriend, as a partner, if I couldn't really look up to him. And so this thing about, well, then why would you have a problem with, if you need to see your man up there, then why do you have a problem with it if your man needs to see you as hot? Men are visual creatures. That's biology, basic. So anyways, but that's just one among many, many, many things that I can say about that book, Women Can't Hear What Men Don't Say. Also the aspect that men, men can't say certain things because then women shut off, turn cold, and punish them by not, giving them the intimacy and warmth that they need. That's also true. And men don't want that consequence, and so they just shut up. And then, and yeah. Anyways, highly recommend this book, the first book, Women Can't Hear What Men Don't Say. The Myth of Male Power. Wow. That I love that book. So much to say about that one. But again, the most poignant thing of this book was that concept of hero. So I don't know how many of you have watched that latest Spider-Man movie. I forgot the name of it, but it's the Spider-Man 2021 release. We just watched it as a family in a movie theater, and I couldn't help. I kept going back to think about this book, The Myth of Male Power, and that concept of the hero, especially in this one scene in Spider-Man where there's this woman she's some administrator of some college, or some big college, okay, some famous university, and Spider-Man doesn't get into this university, and then she's on her way to the airport, and he turns up there to kind of convince her, at least to let his friends go to that university. But then what happens is that this guy with the many claws and whatever, many hands, Octavius or whatever, I don't know these people, but whatever, this guy turns up, and this lady almost dies, and actually so does Spider-Man, or the boy Spider-Man without his powers. But he is so often called upon to risk his life, and in risking his life he is the hero. And it's like it's almost like, and this is true even when it comes to war times, a man is called upon to risk his life, and that's considered what makes him a hero. And oftentimes the portrayal in media is If he's saving a woman's life, so much the better. If a man dies in a movie, a male character dies, it's in the act of saving somebody, it's heroic. But if a woman dies, it's almost like the man is still called upon to not necessarily avenge, but to like kick to task the man that brought upon that. Nobody thinks about, well, shall we take to task the people, individuals, whoever they are, who brought harm to this man? No. And so I thought that was a very profound realization for me. Yeah, so Myth of Male Power, I highly recommend it. Also recommend the Spider-Man movie, but only after you read this book, because you will look at every scene in that movie differently. Now, coming to the book that I was actually wanting to review, The Boy Crisis. I highly, highly, highly recommend this book. If you don't have the attention span to read, please listen to the book. It's a long book. It's written by both, it's a long book in terms of listening to the book. I think it's like 13 or 14 hours or something on Audible. I listened a while back, so, but it's an absolutely brilliant book. It is, I think it's read out by both Dr. Warren Farrell and, what's his name, Dr. John Gray. The same guy who wrote the Venus and Mars book, the Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus book. I personally think Dr. John Gray is extremely entertaining, endearing sort of a man. In this book, yeah, well, I'll let you read the book and decide. Because there is he gets a lot of heat, I think, from his critics about whether he should make the quote-unquote claims that he's making. I think they're perfectly justifiable. I think they're perfectly justified. If you even read Dr. Gabor Mate's book called Scattered Minds, the Canadian version is Scattered Minds. The American version is just Scattered, and somehow they made some ridiculous edits in the book, in the American version, that make the book sound to not exactly be in the spirit and intent of what Dr. Gabor Mate intended. But Dr. Gabor Mate's book is also on ADHD, and even he, in his lifestyle changes, speaks about similar things that Dr. John Gray speaks about. And I think it's just part of the American ethos to give people heat about saying anything against a big pharma. I'll just stop it at that, on that aspect, okay? But let me go into what Dr. Warren Farrell has to say about this. It's in the Boy Crisis book. And if you cannot get to the book or read the book, I highly recommend an interview that Dr. Jordan Peterson did with Dr. Warren Farrell. And the name of the interview is, or the name of the video on YouTube is something like Why Men Are Retreating into Video Games. And what Dr. Warren Farrell says and also presents a lot of good concrete data on, because the Audible does come with a side appendix of like a PDF with all the stats and everything. And no, I am not sponsored by Audible. This is not a monetized channel. This is my personal channel where I say whatever I want to say, and people who want to listen to my opinions on different books can listen or not. It's your call, because it's still a free society. So Dr. Warren Farrell really talks about the importance of fathers and the role of this horseplay and playing around, and what that does for a boy, the value that adds for the boy. And here's the thing, not only in sort of the give and take and the behavioral skills, what it deeply impacts, interestingly enough, is empathy. And that is something that feels kind of counterintuitive. You may think that, oh, it's the mother who engenders empathy in young boys. No, it's actually the father and his horse playing and his like rough and tumble play, as they call it here, right? That we call it horseplay in India because like that's just was not a politically hot button word, but yeah, rough and tumble play is really what builds that aspect in young boys, and in the absence of that, leading to the symptoms of what people look at in this country as ADHD. In some countries that are kind of more male friendly, it's just being a boy. Yeah, again, I know what I'm saying is kind of controversial these days, but whatever. Maybe I was a boy in my past lifetime or something. Who knows? What I found very compelling, and this may seem like a bit of a leap to make, from this book to this topic, but trucking, there is a crisis of hiring truckers in this country at this present time. There are a lot of supply chain issues. We all know that. Why? Why are there supply chain issues? Yes, you can say that there's people have quit their jobs due to certain mandates that companies are making, that governments have told them to make, which they actually don't have the constitutional right to do so, because that's actually something that Stalin would do, where he like outsourced his mandates to like the companies to do, and then like, oh, it's the companies and the neighbors did it, and wash off their hands so they can pretend to be all nice and clean. But okay, so you can say that these truckers are not able to enter certain states and this and that without certain paperwork, and because of that, they're like, screw it, I'll quit. But there's a deeper reason, because even prior to that, right, certain things that, in and of themselves may not be wrong per se, like unemployment insurance, EDD, as we call it I don't know if it's just in California or the whole nation, but unemployment benefits for those who are even like self-contractor types, not just, company employees who are laid off, having those kind of provisions, having this environment that almost makes people who have blue collar jobs or trucking jobs, make them feel less than, having these policies where, oh, everybody can and should go to college, even though some people might be better suited for trades work, and just having that proper respect and proper pay. And again, okay, so now when I talk about proper pay, it doesn't mean higher pay, it means sound money pay. Because, and I'm going to go off on a real tangent here, if you look at, get this, in 1963, the minimum wage was $1.25. At that time, $1.25 was five quarters, 5 JFK quarters, right? Each quarter is 0.25 or 0.24, something like that. Each quarter is a quarter, almost a quarter ounce of 90% pure silver. Now, take that, and because the money at least had a standard until 1971. The US dollar was still linked to gold, not for American citizens because it was outlawed. Yeah, while we were complaining about the Russians being, or not Russians, about the USSR being communist, Americans weren't even allowed to hold gold as money, which is the only sound store of value that a government cannot just, or not the government, the central bankers, the Federal Reserve, above that the BIS, the IMF that issues special drawing rates, that is world money and world currency. All this, right? Nobody can just hit a button and print an ounce of gold the way that that can be issued digitally now, right? And that leads to something called the Cantillian Effect, which in economics, that's the Cantillian Effect is the effect of somebody, a person that lives close to the mines has like the fastest access to the gold and has, it's like having access to the spout, and then you have like, your champagne glass is like, number 400 of the whole tower that you get finally, like the last few dribbles and drips. And this is evidenced by the fact that if you take the population of America, you multiply that by $2,000, and I'm just rounding up figures, and you get about I think it's $400 billion. However, the stimulus that was issued in the year March in 2020 was what, $2 trillion. So what happened to the remaining $1.6 trillion, right? So that's the Cantillion effect. It's like, wait, the public got like the last drips, but even the public was very happy with their $2,000. That ultimately, who got the major stuff? Everybody at the top who did share buybacks and just increased the wealth inequality. So you can't do that. The point of me saying all this is you can't do that if you have sound money that's coherent and anchored with something real. And that link has been insidiously being broken for decades now. And the final blow was, I think, the 1971 when America defaulted on the world. And since then, if you look at sort of even health literature, and I'm forgetting the name of this doctor, but even he's written a really good book, you'll see all the data on how the health inequality has increased, the wealth inequality has increased. All this points to the early 70s. This is also the time of the whole sexual revolution thing, the introduction of birth control, Vatican II. I know I'm connecting a lot of different dots here, and I probably should make a different one on that. However, why am I going into all this? All of this is connected. The absence of sound, coherent money, the fact, the increasing reach of government versus the family, right? You can get more subsidy from the government if you're a single mother than if you're a poor couple. Some people will just not get married for that reason. Do you know? Yeah. Anyway, so such those kind of things, and when I say some people won't get married, I mean like, people who are quite poor, they won't get married for that reason, and then making marriage out just sound to be this oppressive institution, when in fact we're going to get to a world where pretty much only the wealthy people will be able to get married, and it'll be tax beneficial to get married, which is accurate actually, the wealthier you are. But the more you depend on government subsidy, the more you depend on government subsidy, the more the better it is for you to be a single parent, and that only leads to a further fracturing of the family unit, which again in turn gives more power to the government, and which makes this like nanny state business far more likely. And then what does this have to do with the trucking crisis that I began to talk about? Well, when you have a situation where you have an option whether so say you're a young boy, you haven't had the opportunity to really you have this rough housing and all your circuits develop properly, then you're shut down in school because you don't behave in a perfectly agreeable, manner, and you don't want to sit in one place because you needed that horse plan, you didn't have it, and then you get this ADHD diagnosis. Then you have to take these medicines, and then which have other consequences, other side effects as well. And and then you are stuck in this life where, oh, you can go to college, even though you're more of a hands-on type person, who actually does stuff, or but you have to go to college and get into heaps of debt, right? And then if by some fluke you still say, you know what, yeah, I'm not going to do all that, and you go into a respectable blue collar profession that does not even have much respect given to you anymore, along with the unsound currency that's floating around, what is your own state going to be? Are you going to want to perform in these kind of jobs where you're not paid fairly with coherent money, and you're not even so respected by society, much less your family? Where is the society going to go? Yeah. And that's really the boy crisis. And it's heartbreaking, really, to think of, because I don't know where we're going to go with that. I don't know what the solution is. I mean, I think I know some solutions on an individual, personal basis, like the preservation of the family, like the preservation of the role of the father, in a respected way, not just not in a way where, like, in a way, almost like it's almost like a revolution where, again, like I said, as an individual, because I think solutions need to be implemented very individually, not blanket. Like, I would not tell every woman, gee, look up to your man, give him that respect. But no, I think there needs to be that realization, and that return almost to those traditional values and views of, the man is the head of the house, the woman is the heart of the house, and keeping that. Although I heard a very funny saying once: the man is the head of the house and the woman is the neck. Anyways, but I make and I claim to make no recommendations of what all humans and all families should do. But I think in a way, that return to some level of what used to be, those traditions. There's desperately a need, at least in this country, in America, a need for that, for a return to that, because we as women, and I say there needs to be a return to that quite a bit from the side of a woman, because I can only speak as a woman and as an individual woman. There has to be that return, because and again, like I was born and raised in India, and here in America there is a lot more freedom. There's a lot less quote unquote harassment here. I mean, relatively speaking, I would say we're pretty fine over here. Though again, I know I'll get a lot of heat from people for saying even that. But that's fine. you know what? It's a free word. Say whatever you want to say in the comment about, like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about in this country. Da, da, da. No, I still think that women in this country have it a lot better than probably where I grew up. In some ways, okay, because where I grew up, also, you have the male gods and the female goddesses. Nevertheless, on many realms, especially like in this like roadside harassment and like getting groped and touched and all those nasty things that happen in India when you're a girl who's just walking around minding her business. I want to say that shit doesn't happen in America. I realize that in some locations, in some localities, it does, and in that sense, yes, I've been privileged to be in environments where that hasn't happened to me, or perhaps I'm just old now, so it's like whatever, But people don't mess with me because I don't know, I'll probably just slap them back, or whatever. I probably even wouldn't. I'd probably be like, dude, what? I'm an old lady, like, go. Get away from me. But anyway, so or maybe I just have that personality that nobody would bother. Anyways, I'm going off on a tangent. What's new though? Okay, highly recommend these 3 books. I highly recommend The Boy Crisis. If you don't have the time to watch or listen to The Boy Crisis, I recommend you watch the interview titled Why Men Are Retreating into Video Games. I think it's highly revelatory. I also actually tangentially recommend a TED Talk by Dr. John Gray. I forgot what it's called, what the title of the TED Talk is, but if you just do TED Talk John Gray and you see him in a red shirt, that's the one. It's funny one. But I think every woman should watch that one of John Gray in a red shirt. Everyone should watch that. Every woman should watch that because it'll really help teach you 3 ways in which you can improve your marriage or your partnership or your relationship with men in general. Highly recommend pretty much anything by Dr. Warren Farrell. He's a very intelligent, very soft-spoken, but incredibly sharp, brilliant man to listen to. He's done a lot of interviews. There's one book of his that I've not read the book, but I've listened to his interviews about this book. It's about the wage gap, the myth of the wage gap between men and women and all this BS. I agree. I think it's BS about women being underpaid, etc. Because okay, again, before you go about hating me, when you do a minute analysis of what job specifically, what specialty within a job, an individual, I can't even say a woman is doing versus a man is doing, an individual is doing, you will discover deltas and discrepancies between that for the reason of specialty. And that is not something that is gender dependent. And I'm saying that as someone who used to be a senior sales op manager at VMware. And I know I made more than my male peers. Because they were not my peers because I was a senior manager and some were managers, individual contributors, etc. I had more responsibilities and I was compensated more than them, and I know that, and that's why I can say from experience that aspect of as a woman you get underpaid is inaccurate, because if you look at the whole sum of what a job description is doing, that's deeply flawed. So, what else? Yeah, okay. So I will close on that, and yeah, let me know what you think if you feel like it, and highly recommend these books again. I will leave the names of these books in the description box. I don't have any affiliate links or any of that. So I said it's my personal channel. Okay. Thanks again for listening. Take care. Bye.